Hello and welcome to our first in a series of videos regarding the AP 3D Art and Design classes. We're going to be looking at developing your sustained investigation today. My name is Marty Loftus. I teach at Denver School of the Arts in Denver, Colorado. I'm an AP reader and table leader and developed some curriculum for the AP 3D Design course last year, including one of our new pieces for that. So this is all new for all of us, students and teachers and AP readers alike. So be patient with us as we move through here in some kind of difficult times, but hopefully you're going to get some information here that'll be very helpful as you continue to working along your sustained investigation. So let's take a look. Once again, welcome to 3D Art and Design. My name is Marty Loftus, and today we're looking at developing your sustained investigation. So let's do just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about and looking at today. In this lesson, you're going to learn about changes made to the requirements for the portfolio submission in both the sustained investigation and selected works sections. So remember, this is a brand new portfolio this year, and there have already been changes that have made if you took maybe an AP Studio course in the past. Well, due to our changed timeline and for a lot of our students doing remote learning, there have been some additional changes to hopefully make this task a little less daunting. So we'll cover those here right at the beginning of our lesson. We're going to recap some of what students should already have been working on regarding your sustained investigation and kind of where you should probably be at this point. We're going to review the course skills that will be assessed for your sustained investigation. And we're going to show some best practices in the development of your sustained investigation now that we're only going to have 10 images to work with as opposed to 15. So for some of you, that might be kind of a blessing to only have 10 images to upload for your sustained investigation instead of 15. And for some of you who have done a lot of work, this may be a little bit more difficult. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that could be taken care of as well. At the conclusion of this lesson, you should be able to identify changes made to the 3D art and design requirements and how your work will be assessed, and some best practices, once again, moving forward to make some informed decisions about what you're going to be submitting. So what do you need to know? Here are your updates. So once again, you're only going to have 2 sections that you're going to be uploading for your portfolio this year. The first one is your selected works. This was initially 5 works. This is now 3. So you'll only be submitting 3 works for selected works. Now remember, that's 3 works for the AP 3D portfolio, but that's 6 images. So 3 works, 2 images for each of those pieces showing different vantage points, perspectives, or detail shots. And then for your sustained investigation, which we're going to be delving into a little bit more today, again, originally that was 15 images. Now it's going to be only 10 that you're going to be submitting. Once again, you're submitting everything digitally, nothing in person. So here are your AP course skills. This is a lot of information. We're really only going to be talking about a few of those today. So in inquiry and investigation, we're going to be talking about generating possibilities for your investigation and describing how inquiry guides your investigation. And for your core skills 2, which is the making through practice, experimentation, and revision, formulating those questions that guide your sustained investigation and conducting that sustained investigation through art and design. And these are things that you should already be doing or have already done. But we're going to recap, kind of circle back to what you maybe started at the beginning of the year, and then how you've been working on that and how you can move forward with those pieces as well. So let's talk a little bit about how you're going to be scored on your AP portfolio. And we're going to break this into bite-sized chunks. There's 4 sections here. So we're looking at inquiry, practice, experimentation, and revision, materials, processes, and ideas, and 2D, 3D, or drawing, art, and design. We'll be focusing on 3D, but let's look at that a little bit more closely. First of all, inquiry. And we're going to have a series of videos, a couple down the line. One of them is going to be involving specifically inquiry and what that sounds like. But just to give you a bite-sized chunk of that, you really want to be looking at number 3 here at the top of the scoring rubric, where can you create written evidence that identifies an inquiry that guides and sustains an investigation, and visual evidence demonstrating the sustained investigation. So if we look at a work like this from the AP website, the first thing that we want to focus on is the writing portion of that. And for many of our students, this becomes a little bit more difficult. Like I said, there will be a video demystifying inquiry a couple down the line here too, where we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But here's where you're writing the sustained investigation statement. This is a work that we're going to be looking at in our next series of videos, where we're going to look at this SI a little bit more closely and talk about the scoring. But this really shows the kind of inquiry that you should be using and the kind of writing that you should be creating as well. And those images that you select of the works that you've created really should support what you've written in the student written evidence. That inquiry should be driving everything that you've done throughout the semester. The next section revolves practice, experimentation, and revision. So, and again, just to break some of this down, and we all kind of recognize what practice, experimentation, and revision means, but in context of what we're doing with the AP portfolio, experimentation really means working with materials, testing those, your processes, and or your ideas. So it's not just with one method, but with all 3. The practice of using these materials, processes, and ideas, and the revision where you're making purposeful change, correction, or improvement. You're not going to have everything be a success in your AP portfolio. You're going to have failures. And I think, especially this year, those failures are such an important part of this process, because that drives our decision making and those changes and revisions that we create. So again, at the top of the scoring rubric, we're looking at visual evidence of practice, experimentation, and revision, demonstrating development of the sustained investigation, as well as written evidence that describes how the sustained investigation shows evidence of practice, experimentation, or revision. So in a work like this is a great example of process. For this student's 3-dimensional work, he handcrafted this fork, and we'll actually see this piece a little bit later in the video. And he created a motor that was supposed to be driving this fork along a surface. In this case, it did not work. So that was an example of something that he put a lot of work into that didn't work. However, this drove what he did for the next part of his work for this piece. Again, really good examples of process images, getting a good sense of not just what the finished work looks like, but what that journey looks like along the way. Our third section is materials, processes, and ideas. So the materials are your physical substances that you're using to create these artworks. Your processes are not just your physical process, but it's also conceptual activities involved with making works of art and design. And we'll look at some conceptual work as well as some more traditional work as well. And your ideas, concepts used to make works of art and design that can be evident visually or in writing. So here again at the top of the rubric, we really want to focus on looking at those visual relationships. And I think that term is so important as we look at more of the work along the line here, the visual relationships among materials, processes, and ideas. It's these connections that are clearly evident and demonstrate synthesis. This is a good example of a piece that one of my students did several years ago, where she had filled up all these little tiny plastic bags with water and pinned them over an entire gallery wall in a really nice space. To come into the gallery and see the work in person was really beautiful. But it wasn't until reading her artist statement, which described that there were 1,833 bags on the wall representing the people who died during Hurricane Katrina, that we really understand this connection between the materials, the processes, and the concept. So the idea that water was something that not only created this destruction, but also gives us life, really created a great connection and synthesis between, again, processes, materials, and concepts. This was featured on the AP website just a couple of years ago. I remember we pulled these out from the portfolio, beautiful, beautiful pieces, but these were submitted for her quality section. So we didn't understand the processes until we took a look at her sustained investigation. There we learned that these abstract expressionist pieces were done in a hot shop. She was working at a glass studio, and she was taking glass putties and drizzling these on top of wooden panels to create these beautiful, again, abstract expressionistic works. So again, it's not the finished piece itself, although those were extraordinary. It's this connection between the work and the process and the materials that make this such a strong, sustained investigation and such a strong inquiry. The final part of your sustained investigation is really involving your 2D, 3D, or drawing designs. So we're really looking at some different verbiage here: rudimentary, meaning emerging or undeveloped; moderate is adequate; good, proficient, and advanced, highly developed. So again, at that high end of the rubric scale, we're really looking at 3D design elements and principles and skills. So creating visual evidence of good and advanced 3D skills. So we're really looking for works that demonstrate that proficiency, whether you're working with found objects, alternative materials, like this cat, which was done with X-Acto blade knives, and a very simple armature of newspaper and tape. Or if we're working with something like ceramic clay, which shows some really advanced techniques working with hand building and slab construction, as well as barrel firing with the ceramics work. So let's take a look at a couple of resources that you can find online. This will help you to develop some other ideas as you move forward with these investigations that you've already started. So if we look here, we have a couple that I really love to work with my students. The first, if you're not familiar with Colossal, this is a really phenomenal arts and design blog. I use this every day in class. We show an artist of the day. They almost always come from this blog. You can see the URL at the top. It's actually thisiscolossal.com. And you can find works done by professional contemporary artists from all over the world. These are 2D, these are 3D, these are drawings, these are conceptual works, installations, murals, but works that are really, really fantastic. And what I like about the way that they really put these on the website is each one of these from different artists is in and of itself a sustained investigation. These are artists who are working with an idea and exploring these ideas in different ways. So this is a great opportunity to check out and get some inspiration from professional artists from around the world. Additionally, I might recommend checking out, if you have not entered the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards in the past, they actually put up all of the national award-winning works online. In addition to individual pieces, if you click on Explore Online Galleries, you can take a look at some of the student portfolios that were selected from the previous years. If I go to Selected Works and select Art Portfolio, and we won't check out the future new works right now, it'll show you all the portfolios that have been selected from 2019. This is a portfolio from one of my students from last year that was 3D, that explored the idea of different maladies and diseases as different types of jewelry and wearable works. So again, each one of these, as you look through those, really is developing the idea of a sustained investigation. And this can be a great way to develop your own ideas and think about how those work in context with your own sustained investigation. So let's go back to our PowerPoint and check out a little bit more with what we were doing with those sustained investigations. Once again, the changes are selected works moving from 5 works to 3, 6 images, 3 works total. and your sustained investigation is down to 10. Like I said earlier, I think maybe some of you who don't have quite as much work done, what a great opportunity to have just 10 images to submit instead of 15. But for many of you, you may have done a tremendous amount of work already, and that can make it difficult. So one thing to consider is that it's not just about uploading your finished works. Remember, you need to include visual evidence of practice and experimentation and revision. So it's that process too. So when you think about 10 images for an entire sustained investigation, that can be difficult. As an example, and we'll take a look at a few here in terms of how you show this. This is the finished piece that we looked at earlier. You won't be able to show film in your pieces, but we'll just play this for a second. You may not be able to hear this on your end, but this is making a really horrible noise. As I mentioned earlier, when he did this piece, he had constructed a piece that was going to be run by batteries initially, but that did not work. It could not push that across the surface. So in this case, this is a great example of process and revision. This didn't work for him, but it took one of our portable hand drills, and that battery and that power was able to push this across the surface for his finished piece. So again, an image that we look at like this might not show anything in terms of the finished product or even anything that was incorporated into the finished product. And yet this work and these images really show that process and the experimentation. You'll notice that there are 3 photos included in this work. This is one way that you might explore those 10 images that you're submitting to College Board. It's 10 images, but that doesn't necessarily mean just 10 individual photos. These were put together in Photoshop to create one image of 3 photos that demonstrate one idea. For this piece, we're looking at something that is more in the realm of relief using Sculpey clay, yarn, and acrylic paint. So to see it like this, it might be a little bit more difficult to see the 3-dimensional qualities and the processes that were involved in creating something like this. Sketchbooks can be a great way of showing, again, the thinking, creative problem solving, as you start the process of creating your 3-dimensional design works. This is perfectly acceptable to include as an image in your 3D design portfolio, as it does show those processes. You may even want to incorporate some of the tools that you use, and you really want to use close-ups to show detail in highly intricate images. For this piece, the textures that were created in the Sculpey clay were actually done with a needle tool throughout the entire piece. So that process, that intricacy that you see here becomes very important to understand just how much work went into a piece like this. And again, we're looking at multiple photos in one slide that can then be incorporated into your AP portfolio submission. So a work like this that was done by one of my current students could easily be seen as something that should be incorporated into a 2D design portfolio. Again, this is where process is so important and that documentation is so important. These are actually digital design pieces, but they were done in a 3D modeling tool called Blender. If we take a look at one of his process photos, now we can start to get a sense of the way each one of these pieces was designed 3-dimensionally in a virtual space. He even used some more traditional analog methods of creating some of this work, as he molded his face, poured it with plaster, and then scanned it to get a more honest representation of a self-portrait in a work like this as well. So again, with something that has so much intricacies, you really want to make sure that you're documenting a lot of that process. And this again, as opposed to just having all these spread across an entire page, we have multiple photos that are really submitted just as one image. So again, if you really want to make sure that that reader understands the 3-dimensional qualities and those processes, it's so important to document those. For some of you, you may have been doing more time-based or installation type work, where you are investigating space and having other people interact with your work. Again, as we looked at that machine earlier with the fork, you can't actually incorporate video and submit that into your works. That doesn't mean that these are inappropriate pieces to submit. You just have to find some creative ways to do that. In this work, the student created these prints of garbage bags, put them around the room, and then invited people to come in to shred these pieces into a very large box. The whole methodology here and the meaning behind it was pretty well developed. And in some of your boxes that you're going to start writing your ideas, there may not be enough room. He's considering actually submitting a photograph of something that was on the gallery wall for this installation that gives much, much greater context into what he was trying to accomplish with this work. So in really advanced pieces, large pieces like this, that might be another option so that you can give readers a greater amount of context into the work that you've created and that synthesis between the materials and the ideas and the processes. Same goes for things like this that might be interactive. This student has used a heat sensitive paint to give the sense of touch where people can go in and touch these works and act the way that these pieces interact with the viewer. Again, very difficult to show with one image, but if you can show multiple images within one frame, this can suggest the passage of time and really give a greater sense of that process. This will also help when you start writing about a piece so that you can really show the context between those processes, ideas, and materials. It's important to remember that it's not only, again, about your finished work, and I can't stress that enough. Please pay close attention to your visual and written evidence of the practice, the experimentation, and the revision. So to debrief some of the things that we looked at today, make sure you can log into your AP Classroom. And let's take just a moment to go back to our first area here. And we'll share once again back to our web browser. So most of you should be in this position, hopefully by now. But if you go to apcentral.collegeboard.org, here's where you're going to find your information for your AP portfolios. If we click up here to AP Courses and Exams, to course and exam pages, conveniently right here at the top of the page, we have the arts, and here is AP 3D Art and Design. We'll look a little bit more at these pages in the upcoming videos. For AP 3D Art and Design, you can look at right here on the right-hand side where it says sign into AP Classroom. This is where you can sign in with your username and password and go directly to your areas for upload. Here's where you can upload your images, your statements, your commentary, all of that relevant information. If you haven't done that, please make sure that you are contacting your teacher or administrator as soon as possible to begin that process. If you click here under the portfolio, this will have a lot more information that'll be helpful as you develop your sustained investigation as well, including, once again, requirements, but also samples and scoring commentaries, which once again, we're going to be looking at in a couple videos here down the line. Once again, to continue recapping what we've talked about today, make sure you can log into AP Classroom. And next, take some time to go through the work you've completed or uploaded and start making some of those connections. Remember, you can only upload 10 images this year, so make sure you're hitting all of the rubric points, including the idea of synthesis and how your commentary and your inquiry has pushed your ideas throughout your work. Again, celebrate your failures. Be sure to document things that didn't work, especially if they did lead to new questions, problems, and solutions. This is a great way to great opportunity to document those ideas of revision and experimentation. The next video that we put up on the website is going to address continuing your portfolio from home, which can be a little bit daunting as we move forward towards that deadline for AP submission. So please check that out. This can help you to generate some ideas of how to expand upon your work as you are potentially working in limited space and with maybe some limited resources as you will no longer be in the classroom. At College Board, we do know that not all students have access to the internet or a device. We are working on solutions to help students get what they need to show their best work. If you do need mobile tools or connectivity or know someone who does, you can reach us directly to let us know. You'll go to cb.org/tech and let them know your concerns. We are working to make sure that all students have access. So thank you all for watching our first episode. We're really looking forward to putting more content out there. We're really looking forward to seeing the work that you've done over the course of this year, and wish you the very, very best of luck moving forward with your sustained investigation with your AP portfolios. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next video.